Welcome my friends to this EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. H. Beck, Professor in the Center for Community Organization and Development Practice, School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Right now I think I will initiate the module on the relationship between the state, corporate and the community and the implications of community practice. Just to give an idea of state, corporate and community, I think we are a democratic setup. All the states having their own governance, and then at center we have the central government, so we are federal structures. But the best part of it, we are grassroots governance and democratic practitioners. So in each village, what we have is the village panchayat, which is aptly said by Mahatma Gandhi as the monuments of democracy. So every aspect of development of the village ought to be looked up by the village community, the Gram Sabha itself. And hence the development programs are also being proposed by each of the panchayats, and all these are endorsed to be approved, and we have the states and the central government supporting us rural development programs and projects and wide variety of welfare activities. Now it is important to say that all these years, even prior independence and post-independence, communities are struggling for its own development, but still success appears to be very glimpse and far-fetched. Obviously, it doesn't mean that we are not making a progress. Definitely, there is upliftment and we are advancing. Nevertheless, the problems also appears to be mounting all through, despite all these endeavors of the people and the governance. We appreciate NGOs for their profound community organizations and development. And there are a wide variety of institutions, and today we also have these corporates getting into community organizations and development through CSR programs. And this is what, in short, going to deal with in this present module. So from this module, what we could get out of as learning would be the critically analysis of India's economic growth model under the neoliberal policy framework. To understand also the concepts on and the functions of the CSRs of the corporates, and understand the shifting roles of the responsibilities of community welfare and development programs from the state to corporate sectors through CSR programs. Moreover, gain insights about the models of community practice to suit the 21st century context. As an introduction, the pursuit of social and economic justice is an essential element of community practice. This also requires an integration of community practice with the social policy. Equipped with knowledge concerning the policy environment, community practitioners are in a better position to plan various strategies for social change. Information related to policy context helps to integrate community practice and social policy approaches to alleviate poverty and social inequality. Post the economic reforms of 1991, neoliberal policy framework, the development paradigm in India, the corporate sector has been able to reap the benefit of such development policies with the induced roles of states in welfare organizations and activities. The idea of inclusive growth under neoliberal policy framework, the fundamental concept was that capitalism was a primary strategy or sector which led to deprivation and impoverishment of large chunk of communities in our country. So in this context, I see the term inclusive growth is used by several developing countries in the context of the neoliberal policy framework. United Nations Development Programme had defined inclusive growth as the process and outcome where all the group of people have participated in the organizations of growth and have benefited equitably from it. It includes all the sections of society as its beneficiaries, as well as partners in the growth, and that includes of the excluded should be embedded in the growth process. Growth that has a higher elasticity of poverty reduction, high reduction in poverty per unit of growth. It is also defined in terms of reductions in inequalities in income, assets, as well as in the vertical inequalities, that is individual inequalities, and horizontal inequalities, group inequalities. So the idea of inclusive growth under neoliberal policy framework. Proponents of the neoliberal policy support higher economic growth, since it was presumed that higher growth level will translate into a dip in the inequalities. Simon Kuznets' 1988, economic inequality increases over time while a country stays developing. However, after a certain average income is attained, inequality begins to decrease. The tax revenues of governments will increase, enabling them to spend more on education and skill development and infrastructure to provide opportunities to people. This will also result in higher government social expenditures. The trickle-down effect of growth will positively impact the excluded and marginalized through more jobs and income. So distributions for inclusion, a critical analysis indicate under the neoliberal framework, the burden of inclusion of the excluded falls on redistributions of the revenues earned through a higher rate of growth of GDP. Issues with this approach does not alter the growth process which is responsible for the inclusion. Redistribution is a question of political willingness. Neoliberal policy may not permit the required level of redistribution. It only focuses on the rate of growth of the GDP, takes away the relevance of other factors such as macroeconomic parameters, saving and investment, performance on private corporate sector, skill development, as well as infrastructures. The relationship between economic growth rates and private corporate sectors initiated an healthy alliance between the corporations and the state. Redistributions of inclusion. Since 2011, there is a tendency to concentrate on draconian restrictive policies to cut down public expenditures, no matter how essential these may be. The changing role of state, especially with regard to redistributions of resources and cutting down of public expenditures, highlights the gap in the present development paradigm. This gap is being filled with corporate and social responsibility, which involves the role of both thriving corporate sectors under the neoliberal policy framework and the state through the Companies Bill 2000 2013. Some of the companies even earlier were engaged with CSR activities, but after 2013, the government has made mandatory to all the corporates to share at least 2% of their overall profits into the field in the form of CSR for community organizations and development. So the concept of corporate social responsibility is inevitable to understand what it implies and means to us. It has evolved for over a period, the good citizens concept of early 21st century included within its purview concerns for all those directly involved with the corporation, employees, stockholders, customers, the local communities, and the government. According to the social leader concepts of CSR, a corporate should be deeply involved in attempting to solve social problems and would advocate any governmental interventions necessary to achieve quality of life. The super citizens role members, the super citizens role emerged these concepts and advocated a new spirit of volunteerism, a new form of public and private partnership, and new private sector initiatives for addressing social problems of the communities. Redistributions of inclusions. As it has been observed that major chunk of population is deprived of economic development, that leads to vicious circles of poverty, unemployment, and again on the realm of poverty. And there is a very little chance for improvement. Precisely to enable these people to overcome their poverty, it is attributed and assumed that corporates will have a major contributions, as they are also the very beneficiaries of the community contributions in terms of land, environment, energy, and employment provisions as manpowers. So the huge amount of income and profit which the corporates generate, it is an apt time to pull it back to the communities in the form of CSR and take up various development activities which could include education, rural development, development of infrastructures, creations of employment, economic activities, and a wide variety of capability buildings of the people in order to make them more capable and sustain for upscaling their own development independently. Obviously, the state government also comes to rescue by incorporating these corporations to share their profits and their commitment for the rural development through community organizations and community development. There are major companies, as we can witness, Tata Group of companies, Reliance, and Bharat Petroleum, and many others, including multinational companies, are also engaged with the different CSR projects and programs at diverse places all over the country. So it is important to understand what does CSR implies and what are the obligations of corporations in the context of CSR activities. CSR is about all companies manage the business processes to produce an overall positive impact on society, achieving commercial successes in ways that honor ethical values and respect people, communities, and the natural environments. Often criticized that these companies acquire land through the help of the government and are also attributed for destructions of the environment, displacement, and problem on rehabilitations of the displaced. So it is imperative that these companies also respect these assets and build up and promote natural environment where people could prosper and find meaning in their life. So CSR in equitation form is the sum of economic responsibility, in other words, make profit, legal responsibilities, where the corporates are obliged and mandated to obey the laws, ethical responsibilities, be ethical and be responsible for the communities who are a big support to the corporations, and therefore roll back the earning, roll back the benefits for the benefit of the community in the form of CSR practice. Influence the workplace, the marketplace, the supply chain, the community, and the public policy realm. So what is required of is be just and respect and be in consonance with the requirement of the existing laws. Worldwide definitions of CSR by the World Business Council for Social Development entails a commitment of the corporates, ethical behavior, contributions to development, improving the quality of life. It goes beyond philanthropy and compliance and addresses how companies manage their economic, social, and environmental impacts, as well as their relationship in all key spheres of influence. That includes the workplace, the marketplace, the supply chain, and the community and the public policy realms. In concrete concepts and understanding, it can aptly be said that CSR should be the rupee measurable, and it must bring direct benefits to the marginalized, disadvantaged, poor or deprived sections of population. So it should not benefit only the employees of the company and their families. It must be in the form of projects or programs, hence the activities be projectivized. Components of our projects are as follows. Need-based assessments, there has to be baseline survey and study, clear identified time frame, specific annual financial allocations, clearly identified milestones, defined and measurable objectives and goals, robust and periodic review and monitoring, evaluations and assessments wherever it is possible by third party. Corporates are expected to fund projects for their own accounts through implementing agencies. Government programs, initiatives can be complemented or supplemented. Programs, projects must be within the country. The history of CSR, as aptly created or brought into by Tata Energy Research Institute, 2001, traced history of CSR in India. There were 4 models of CSR. The first ethical model, corporate philanthropists, commitment to social development, where even Gandhi developed the concept of trustship. Static model, post-independence, 1947. India adopted socialist and mixed economic framework, public and private. Third, liberal model, companies are responsible towards their owners. Stakeholders model, liberalizations, privatizations and globalizations, industries and businesses also have a growing range of social obligations. So the corporates have obligations to society in the context of national interest should take the priority. Political non-alignment, have legal compliance and follow rules of the law, honest and ethical conduct, ethical behavior, social concerns and social responsibilities, environmental friendly and safe working conditions, uphold brand of the country. Measures promoting informed shareholders' participations. There has to be transparency, financial recording and reporting, fair employment practice and human treatment, encouraging whistleblowing, inquire and inclusiveness and empowerment, participative and collaborative environment. My experience of CSR of different companies indicate that corporates have a lot of finance and requirement to be plowed on the CSR for community organizations and development. The fact that they have so much money and expertise, they are a bit too impatient because they get subdued by the impatience of the communities itself. So the tendency of these corporates are spending huge amount of money, at times not really defined by the community, but often it could be said that identified by the corporations itself. So actually the companies or the corporates through CSR programs should adhere to the identifications of need of the community and let the community come together, mobilize the resources, take initiative for implementation, take the benefits of these schemes and projects, monitor, evaluate, learn out of it, and revamp, re-executions, translations, and implementations, and sustain on their own. On the contrary, people tend, the corporates, to take the responsibility to upscale, sustain, and keep on contributing the benefits to the community without having any accountability and liability. I've also witnessed the communities, I don't want to mention the companies, but it is primarily in Gujarat, where villagers in the first visit, we had tremendous humanitarian concerns, we had beautiful relationship and dialogues, give and take and respects. So within a span of 5 years, the village was totally transformed into an urban setup with concrete buildings, infrastructure development and services. The fact we were rejected and we were not even allowed to enter into the community. And there were 3 huts which were the original housing structures of the village. They kept it as monuments. It was tough time for us to interact with the community. So it kept me wondering as to what has gone wrong. Is the availability of resources that becomes the cause of destructions of this beautiful community? Or is it something wrong with the CSR strategies where they were too impatient and they fell on the demand and probably the whims and wishes of the communities by meeting all their requests and requisitions? This was a bit mind-boggling. So every CSR activities should take care and let the community sustain what it is, all the good aspects and traditions, and not change and become volatile and get transformed into totally unexpected realm of community realities. Now, corporate social responsibilities, a bit of critical appraisal. Contributes corporates or corporations must conduct their business operations responsibly by upholding core human rights and labor standards and giving due regards to stakeholders' interests, including shareholders, workers, customers, and communities at the environment. The CSR obligations of corporations do not lie outside of its core business but are an integral part of it. CSR is considered to be direct spending towards activities mentioned in Schedule 7th. However, any activity apart from this list which makes investment to achieve higher environment standards in its operations will not be considered CSR. This is flawed. Corporate philanthropy just keeps the existing structures of the inequality in place. Such CSR spending is also likely to create trust societies and NGOs of all varieties, and with motivations and allegiance to absorb such funding. CSR activities end up being public relations and marketing genius at work, often misleading and manipulating with a keen eye on the returns and investment of other tokenism's welfare. CSR is effective without corporate accountability. For example, if companies are spending on educational institutions to safeguard the interests of the beneficiaries of such projects, the content and quality of curriculum, access by students, assessment and improvement, and long-term sustainability must be ensured. Relationship between the state, the corporate, and the community implications for community practice. There is a need for the community workers and development practitioners to advocate for great state investment of welfare and development activities. Innovative mechanisms to integrate CSR initiatives with community development work in such a way that there is greater participation of the people. 3 models of community practice: political and social actions, community, social and economic development, and social planning, which can be dealt separately. For instance, political and social actions efforts seek to develop powerful organizations that can change policy directions and public agenda so that opportunities and free spaces for development can emerge. Community workers to be engaged with groups at both local and global level for the purpose of building democratic societies. Make a corporate aware of democratic decisions making with the participation of the people in communities in all their CSR initiatives. Second, community, social and economic development, if integrated with CSR initiatives, can address the challenges faced by the poor and marginalized communities. Increasing the social and economic security is an equally important and growing arena for community practitioners. Need for integrated development strategies of poverty alleviation through combined human capacity building, popular education, and locally controlled economic development. Social planning, it is a method of practice that refers to the development, expansions, and coordinations of social service and social policies. Social planning takes place on a scale that can range from neighborhood to international and worldwide efforts. This model operates through the wide range of non-profit and public sector agencies at local, state, national, and international level. Being a technical model, it is focused on the rational planning approaches carried out primarily by experts. However, there is a growing need to incorporate grassroots groups, citizens, organizations, and broader range of community voices, making social planning more community-friendly and community-based. So having dealt with the state, CSR, and community and its impact in community organization, the experience of the vulnerable and marginalized is an antithesis of what the neoliberal framework proposed. Poor and the marginalized communities have not been able to enjoy the benefits of economic growth, as a result of which the inequalities have increased. The expected redistributions of resources through greater state expenditures remains unfulfilled. CSR has been brought about fulfilling states' role in welfare and development with greater legitimacy and state support. However, the community worker needs to work around the state and the corporate to build the collaborative partnership and further the community's goal or objectives. So we see the NGOs, we see the corporates and various other institutions that require a favor and support, encouragement by formal organizations, that is the government, both at the states and the central government. This will enable the community mobilizations, community development, and community organizations, which will eventually take the roadmap of community and development of the country as a whole. With this, I complete the module. Hope it was an occasion to understand a bit of it, and if required, you could always access to the list of references for further understanding. Thank you very much.